It is a broadly popular institution. They remained neutral in 2005. They didn't follow orders and fire on crowds during the Cedar Revolution. But they didn't remain neutral in 2008. They actually coordinated with Hezbollah when it took over Beirut militarily. Aram cited 1958 with the Lebanese armed forces not following orders from the civilian leadership of the country. But they didn't do so in 2008 either, when the government, the democratically elected government of Lebanon, took two decisions, one to change the military official at Beirut airport, and the other to dismantle Hezbollah's telecommunications network. So it's an independent actor. Will it be a neutral actor? In terms of U.S. assistance, I think, and this is just an aside, it would behoove us to provide more civil military citizenship and team-building classes for this institution. Because although it is a national institution, it is and remains deeply divided within the armed forces. The whole institution remains deeply divided. There's an official, I'm told, within the Ministry of Defense whose job it is to assign soldiers to units and make recommendations on promotions based on religion. This happens. Another question, will Lebanon veto sanctions against Iran at the UN Security Council? How would Congress respond to Lebanon if it was the only state other than, who else has voted against them? Libya? I don't think Libya even voted against them yet. They abstained. What if under... Voted for sanctions. Okay. What if Lebanon voted against them? I don't know. I don't know if they will. My guess is they'll abstain, but I can't imagine that Congress would be too pleased. What if the government of Lebanon, under pressure from Hezbollah, refuses to pay its share of the International Tribunal? It would be a violation of U.S. Security Council Resolution 1664 and 1757. It's a Chapter 7 enforceable resolution. What if, unlike 2006, the Lebanese Armed Forces doesn't go to the barracks but participates in the next Israeli-Hezbollah war? Will Washington be eager to rebuild the Lebanese Armed Forces after it becomes what most likely would be a decimated force? I don't know. Finally, March 14th won the elections this past summer, but Hezbollah, as we know, has preponderant influence within the government. This government, via its ministerial statement, legitimizes Hezbollah's weapons. It's a violation as much as the Israeli overflights of Security Council resolutions. Now, recent comments by Minister of Defense Elias Moore to Al-Manar point to a problem. Even he has said, and I think offered voluntarily, that the resistance weapons guaranteed deterrence against the enemy. And he's right? It's a deterrent against Israel. But they also violate Lebanese sovereignty, and they provoke wars that cost the state some $6 billion last time. I think that this gets at the heart of the problem, which is as long as you have this militia, the Lebanese armed forces and the state can never truly exert sovereignty over its own territory. What Syria, Michel Aoun, and Hezbollah have been saying is not that the resistance should be incorporated into the Lebanese armed forces, which is, I think, what we would like, but that the Lebanese armed forces and the state should incorporate into the resistance. I don't know if this is going to happen. I can't imagine it would, but they have broader goals for the state of Lebanon. The U.S. government has a lot of sympathy for Saad Hariri and what remains of March 14th, but the more that Hezbollah's agenda is incorporated into the state's policy, the harder it will be for Washington to provide support to Lebanon, including to the LAF. I could say a few more things, but I think I'll stop there. I covered most of the bases.
Great. Well, thank you very much, David and Aram. A lot of interesting points. Why don't you stay here, since both of you will be speaking from the podium. A lot of questions raised by David. Maybe some of the audience would like to address some of the questions raised, but I'm sure we have a lot of questions today. There are a lot of embassy people here, a lot of Lebanon experts. So we'd like to open up the floor. I also want to say to the people sitting in the overflow room, there should be cards, question cards, that you can write questions on and pass them to an intern, and they'll bring them up front. Questions? Not a single question. Okay. He's coming. If you could please just state your name and affiliation.
Bill DeBaki, and I'm affiliated with myself, my company, Maxima International LLC. I would like to ask what I think is the fundamental question, and that is to say, I understand through both speakers sort of what they see as where the policy is. But my question is, looking back, has not the United States been too tepid in terms of its long-term support of a sovereign Lebanon and a strong military? Because if the policy is to be concerned about Syria, if the policy is to be concerned about Hezbollah and their own foreign policy as identified with Iran, it seems to me that rather than Congress denying, more support, as David mentioned, because Lebanon has to wander around and bring the people together that it inherits in its sovereignty, that we play this game, we may support, we may not support, whereas I see in Afghanistan and even in Iraq the position of take and hold and work with the civilians and so forth. And so I'm really questioning this tepid position that the U.S. is in rather than the whole hog position that would be probably better even for Israel, because then there would be a balance between the Arab states and Israel and sort of a cover for the U.S. position that it seems that we're just primarily favoring Israel in any respect. So, your question.
Who wants to take that first?
I didn't want to say too much during the actual presentation. As I alluded to during the talk, there is an important political dimension associated to why things are the way they are. And when we talk about the state in Lebanon, there's a lot of talk about building up the army and building up the state. But what are we talking about when we say building up the state in Lebanon? The state is essentially, especially in the post-Taif context, but really over history, although we are remiss to admit it in Lebanon, a vehicle wherein policies are unveiled, not made. The political sphere has back channels of communication, decision-making is made behind the scenes through the archipelago of back channel networks that exist, and the state is populated by actors and interests. It becomes a predatory state to extract resources and rents, and ultimately it's a place where policy is unveiled. In this context, the US, when it evaluates Lebanon, a lot of folks see this. They realize that Lebanon's a difficult place. I remember when I first started working on the Lebanese Armed Forces, my boss, Dr. Cordesman, walked over to my desk and he said, Aram, just remember one thing among two. The one that matters for this particular topic is that the US is very difficult for Lebanon. The way politics are executed, the way decisions are made, the way we associate the state as being the executive, legislative, and the judiciary, that does not truly exist yet in Lebanon. Civil-military relations are impacted by this. The effectiveness of the military is impacted by this. The strength of neo-patrimonial networks, patronage networks, patron-client relations exists because of this. So the US is always going to factor this in. It's not going to be easy sailing for Lebanon to become a more prevalent part of US policy, because there are no real partners in Lebanon, be it for the US or anyone else for that matter, who can leverage their position domestically and have sufficient cross-sectarian appeal. And I think this is where me and David differ. There is an important struggle in post-Taif and post-2005 Lebanon. You have 4 constitutional bodies, or documents of reference, the National Pact,